Jim, another argument skeptics use to discredit the Gospels are the later insertions to the text. And therefore, they say if parts of the Gospel have been corrupted, then how can anyone actually trust that the text is, well, it's reliable?
Yeah, and this is something I think that a lot of our young brothers and sisters, kids who are coming up through high school and end up in university setting, may never have even thought about. Maybe they've never even known that there are some aspects, some small pieces of the Gospels that we don't have good textual documentation for. They appear to be late additions. They are small pieces of text, sometimes larger pieces of text, that have been inserted. At some point they don't appear until many centuries after the earliest copies. The earliest copies for sure don't show them. And so I think a lot of skeptics have looked at those examples and said, the fact that this line does not appear early, it appears to be a late insertion. You see how you can't trust any of this stuff. It's been corrupted over time. I can't trust it. And I think that's really a lazy way to approach the text. Every crime scene I've ever worked is both messy and beautiful. If a victim is passing away right before I get there, paramedics have probably been there before I have, and the paramedics have tried to resuscitate the victim. So when I get there, I've got a scene that's filled with evidence of the actual murder, but also filled with the mess from the paramedics. I've got their stitches, their sutures. I mean, you name it. I got their bandaging. Half the blood smears are from paramedics and not even from the suspect or the victim. I've got both evidence and artifacts in my crime scene. Now, I've never had a problem, though, learning carefully how to remove the artifacts to make sure I just get back to the basic evidence that I'm going to need to make a case. I simply need to understand what caused the artifact to enter my crime scene, to be able to explain that to the jury, and then I can safely remove it and say, okay, if we remove that mess that was made by the paramedic there, that doesn't belong to anybody but the paramedic. Let's take it out of the scene and see what we have left. Then we can actually look at the evidence in the scene. And I've done a number of cases where the scene is a mess. It's filled with artifacts, but I've had no problem convicting a suspect because we're able to remove it. And so that's what we do with textual criticism, right? We look at the text and we say to ourselves, okay, what appears to be a small variation, maybe a copyist variation over the years, and does this mean it's not reliable? Do you realize how many copies of the New Testament we have? The more copies we have, the more certainty we can have by comparing the copies to what is in the crime scene that's evidence and what is artifact. We have a beautiful dilemma that we have enough copies of the Gospels to be able to identify the artifacts, remove them, and carry on. And that's what I would tell any good detective at a crime scene. You think that the fact you've got artifacts in your crime scene means you can quit? No. You've got to work through that, remove the artifacts and solve the case. And that's what we're trying to do with the Gospels.